Om Shanti, good evening, warm welcome to interview with a Raj Yogi around Raj Yoga Essentials. So, the basics of Raj Yoga, the study. And our topic this evening, which might be a part one, is karma, which means action. So, we'll begin as always with a reflection. Sitting comfortably and with a sense of purpose, with a desire to understand and experience. I focus my attention inwards as the observer on one of my most powerful capacities, which is to create thoughts. Watching my mind create each thought. And interestingly, how every thought in turn leads to a feeling. This very basic experience of planting a seed and experiencing the result. A thought is created, and the result is a feeling. Thoughts are incredibly powerful seeds, and I am the one creating them. Every thought leads to a feeling, and in turn becomes the impetus behind actions. So how careful will I want to be with the thoughts I create? And how inspired I will be to gain mastery over the thoughts I create. It is what's happening inside my own thoughts that create the fruit of feelings. Just noticing that basic connection between the thoughts I create and the feelings that result. Om Shanti.
Shanti, welcome to Raj Yoga Essentials. Got a pretty sensitive topic, and it is karma. And perhaps to start, why is this such an important topic in terms of Raja Yoga?
So, of course, in the study of Raj Yoga, we think it's a very beautiful topic. And Raj itself means sovereign or master. So, Raj Yoga has a very ambitious objective, which is to become the master of the world. And as it turns out, this experience of feeling like a master of the world begins with mastery of the self. And that idea of mastery of the self assumes that I am open to taking that responsibility over my inner kingdom, what I think and feel and how I act. And the law of karma is all about, so there's karma and the law of karma is all about this idea of this formula: whatever actions I perform will result in a consequence. So you can begin to see the meeting point between Raj Yoga and the law of karma. That if I am going to have mastery over the self, over the world, this kind of responsibility over the self, then I will be able to also, if you will, have this perspective on how life works. Not so much that I'm a victim of what's going on, but actually a master of what's going on, that the actions I perform are creating results. So let me have mastery over the actions I'm performing as a Raj.
So, for those who've taken the Raj Yoga course, and for those who haven't, um, the first lesson is soul,
Mm,
soul consciousness.
mm,
Why is that such an important lesson to learn? Why don't just jump into the law of karma?
mm. I don't think I can really understand any aspect of spirituality without experiencing myself to be a spirit. But we have two choices: either I am a soul or I am the body. I know it sounds all or nothing, but it's very difficult to be to mix the two. If I think I am the body, that's very externalized. And the moment I think I'm the body, then my sense of self is suddenly out there in the physical world. It's very difficult to have mastery of that if I'm actually mixed up in it. So being able to sit in the seat of I am the soul, and there is this kingdom, this outer world. Um, so that gives us the, if you will, the seat or the capacity to have that kind of mastery.
And so it actually leads to the second question, which is of what you have actually talked about the word victim
Mm-hmm.
in terms of learning about experiencing, moving into that, experience that world of being a soul. How does that help in terms of being able to let go of these quite often victim feelings that we have about a lot of things, not just really extreme situations, but even just
Mm-hmm.
very mild situations?
Even as we sit here right now, to just experiment, and this idea that I am the body. So let's say that I'm going to move the right arm of this body. So, how is that going to work if I am the body? Like, who's going to tell the right arm to move? Does the right arm tell itself to move? Like, there's always that feeling that there is me, the thinker, the one with will, and I am giving a direction to the body. So I say, right arm, move, rather than it just doing whatever it wants to do. There has to be this sense of the driver and the car. And many do feel once that goes, it's like, oh, I don't know what happened. I didn't mean to do that. My arm just flew out. And of course, we can see where that begins to go. I didn't mean to hit that person. I didn't mean to say that. It's just, it's as if I had no control over my senses. I had no control over my actions. So the sense of I, the soul, puts me back in the driver's seat. And then Raj Yoga looks a lot at empowering me to be able to drive my life accurately. Otherwise, it's going to be, I didn't mean to get into that accident. I didn't mean to do that, because there's no sense of me directing, and there's certainly no sense of power. So, this idea, if I think I am the victim, then I'm going to go through life. Like, first off, I will feel no control even over this vehicle. You know, that they made me look at them. It's like they have that much control over your eyes. They made me say that they have that. Like it starts to sound absurd, if not frightening, that something out there can have so much control over what I do rather than me having so much control over what I do under any circumstance. So it really begins to make us think about, reflect on how does like this physical life actually work? Do I just go through it reacting, hoping for the best? I always think of that as playing dodgeball. I'm just going to try and, or do I go at that through it with the sense of creator, that I am going to create a beautiful life? And when I say create, it doesn't mean at the expense of hurting someone else or power over someone else, but this very essential part of spirituality is with pure intention, with benevolence. Am I going to go through life in that fashion?
How does one understand though that there are many times where like I didn't mean to say that out loud. I
Mm.
didn't mean to do because in a way many just even want a context of understanding.
Hmm.
I'm feeling like I'm a victim. I feel like I'm out of control. So why? What is happening then?
I think that's where it becomes quite beautiful. We often have a very, um, if you will, very almost primitive understanding of karma that makes us feel
Mm,
bad. Oh, it's just okay. I don't know what I did, but clearly I did something bad, and I'm getting these bad. There's no sense of understanding, which turns it into a very compassionate situation. So I need to understand not just how I would like the life to be, but also I need to understand why it's not happening that way. Why am I engaging in behavior as if I have no control? I need to kind of know what happened, that's become almost our reality. I've lost control. So what happened? Rather than just trying to seize back control in a very violent way, um, repressing a lot, why not through understanding in a very non-violent way reclaim mastery of the self? So understanding is huge, and I think it changes our feelings towards a lot of karma.
So is there this backstory that I learn as a soul that helps me to understand karma in a way that helps me to become empowered?
Hmm. I think there's two things, basic things we need to know in anything really, is what our capacity is and why we're not able to express it. What's the story there? And those are the two things that Raj Yoga really excels in. Is we certainly, I don't think, have a full understanding of our capacity as long as we think we're a body. We'll never have a full understanding of our capacity. But we also need to know, but why am I not operating according to that capacity? There's a very beautiful saying in Raj Yoga, which may seem a little bit like it's jumping ahead a lot, but I think the feeling of it you will get, which is if we are children of God, then why are we not in heaven? And it's kind of saying, wow, we have so much capacity. Why is it not being expressed? What do I need to understand? It's not about blame, it's or shame. It's about understanding, which is very compassionate.
Mhm. We often, it's interesting you use the word primitive, that we have a pretty primitive understanding of karma. And honestly, you hear, we throw that word a lot around a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe we don't use it that way, but we say what goes around comes around. The way we use it is very punitive,
Mm-hmm.
actually. There doesn't feel like there's any sense of understanding in that sense. So, and that's often used as well in the punitive way when it comes to seeing events and like as things seem so random and suddenly happen. But how does the understanding of the law of karma in the context of Raj Yoga help me as identifying myself as a soul to move forward.
Mhm. I think again, and on your point, I always find it interesting that if something that we perceive, and I want to emphasize the word perceive as bad or unfortunate, we tend to use the word karma. And sometimes we'll use it against other people. You know, oh, it'll come back to them. They're not being very nice. Okay. But when something good happens, we just say, oh, it's such good luck, such good fortune. It's very
Some random
strange.
thing.
Yeah. Um, but this idea that, again, I need to appreciate what what is the capacity of the soul. I need to appreciate what happens to the soul as it begins to forget itself. And as I forget myself, I start to engage in behavior that's driven by forces that will create certain consequences, ones that I probably don't want. So the bottom line again is Raj Yoga looks at happiness. Happiness is a result of the actions we perform. So if I say I want to be happy, I am creating that happiness by the actions I perform. So it's so much in my best interest to understand how to create that happiness rather than waiting for certain things to happen out there that make me happy. What actions do I need to perform that will create that happiness? It turns out that happiness that are aligned with what we say our core values or our spiritual nature create happiness. Actions that are not aligned, i.e., when I forget I'm a soul, when I disconnect from my core values and start to be driven by desires, that does not create happiness.
Mhm.
Sorry, something
Our
very
monitor
interesting
has
just
some interesting messages coming up,
something really fun happened. Mm,
but no one was disturbed, right?
no, it was intriguing. Mm,
I wonder if I lost my train of thought that way.
mm,
The story of me, the
mhm,
soul. What is my story? Where am I heading? And what does that have to do with karma? Because we kind of think there's my story and then there's this karma thing out there.
mm. You know, it's so powerful that what's really running the show on this physical stage, what's really running it isn't physical at all, which is kind of a funny thing. And yet we kind of plod along at this point thinking that the physical is running it. And yes, we do have to perform physical actions, but at the end of the day, I've always liked the idea of seed and fruit or seed and flower, that there is no flower without the seed. So it's the stuff underground, the invisible stuff that's running the show, the spiritual stuff. So I, as a soul, we are innately, intrinsically good. We are actually designed to perform good actions, which means we're designed to sustain a beautiful world. Those good actions will always create a beautiful world, beautiful relationships. Great. And I think there is a memory in there, and we miss it a lot. And as we begin to move through time, it's a bit like a battery in a toy. We start to lose power and we start to lose that connection with, if you will, our intrinsic capacity, but we're still performing actions. So, as the quality of our actions change, the quality of our world changes depending on the state of the soul. And we start to try and get that happiness from the outside rather than creating that happiness from the inside, from our intrinsic nature. I kind of need to know that's happened so that I'll be very motivated to stop focusing on trying to get or expect the happiness from outside and be very motivated to get back to that original state so that I automatically will create happiness through my activity.
Now, at the beginning, you were sharing about, there's thoughts that I have, and then there's result or outcome or consequence of thoughts I have. I mean, I think that's why I chose the word sensitive because it is a
Mhm.
sensitive
Mhm.
topic.
Yeah.
Even the word consequences is a sensitive word
Mhm.
because it's always used in a punitive way. I mean, it's a
Mhm.
neutral word, but once
Mhm.
one hears it in that context again and again, that's all they actually feel
Mhm.
because it just means a sequence of events, right? One
Mhm.
after another.
Mhm.
But in terms of being able to have a healthy experience of myself and getting back to myself again, what does it mean to dishonor myself? And there's a consequence from that. It just feels like I just feel bad.
Mhm.
Maybe on a superficial level something happens, I feel bad, I
Mhm.
just go back into that victim mode again. But what exactly is happening in with this law of karma that I'm doing something to dishonor myself? What is it? Some force that's out there? Like what's going on?
Yeah, it's not that anything is doing anything to me from outside. It's actually all happening inside. We have something called a conscience, and I think that we sort of it's interesting what happens in general to us as we start to lose power and forget ourselves. It means our capacities change, our sensitivity to what's going on inside of us changes because we're more and more drawn outside, more and more interested in what's going outside. So we're not so much hearing the conscience anymore. And so, as it's so critical. I'd say the first step in Raj Yoga before looking at karma or God or anything is to have a really powerful experience of myself as a soul, this incredible self respect, experience of my intrinsic or original goodness. That's to have faith in that because I think that will determine how everything else
Mm,
sits. If I don't, then I start to feel bad about everything else, right? And I start to interpret it in a really almost twisted way. Because once I have a really beautiful experience of myself as a soul, it's like, wow. We often use the word waha, the wonder of me, that I am this remarkable being with all of these incredible, this eternal nature that's just beautiful. And then when I hear, say, about the law of karma, it's like, this is fantastic. I am being given back creative control. So I'll understand the law of karma. I'll understand also how things got off base, and I'll understand why I started to feel bad about myself. It's two reasons. I was going against my core nature, and that everything, we use the word fruit, but every time I do something, there is a result. So every time I say I do something out of ego, like compare myself to somebody, I know I'm doing it to try and feel better.
mm,
So I might say, I am better than that person. I got 86 on my exam. They only got 76. And at that moment, it might, because ego is, it might feel, but in acting that way, I've gone against my core nature of self respect. There will be a consequence. So I've performed that action. There will be a consequence to that action because it wasn't benevolent. But there's also what we call this inner burden that happens because I went against my core values. So it's kind of a double whammy to the soul in the sense of temporarily I got a hit, but then I get these weird results later on. People don't like me or whatever. It's the result of so the actions have consequences that create something I didn't at all intend, but they are perfectly matched to what I did. But also internally, there's a consequence because I went against my core values. And that just, is such a double whammy to the soul. And, to be able to come out from that and start to act differently, to perform, to do, requires I first have to get that self
mm.
respect, the strength of self respect back.
So, from the experience of one who is studying Raja Yoga,
Mm-hmm.
and when you're using that example, um, now you're faced with all these consequences,
Mm,
but now you're increasing your sense of self. Does one's feeling of those consequences I faced, does that change in the sense,
mm,
can one feel that those consequences are actually in service to the real me
mm.
versus,
Right.
because that's where ego gets really upset.
It's so funny. We had a funny example because there's many accounts, karmic, different um, places that the consequences can come. Some are mental, some are physical, some are financial, some are relationships. So, different aspects of our life that we have these different accounts, if you will. So, the body is one. And we were just talking about this today that this body has a funny structural damage from who knows when, it doesn't matter. And very often I would find I was in situations where being in dance, etc., where very often I was always being corrected and criticized because it didn't look right. And eventually, as I started to develop spirituality, two things happened. I could feel from the inside, no, it's not right. It's not right at all. Um, but the second thing, which is far more interesting, is that I wasn't affected by people criticizing me, even though I also knew, yep, there's something not right there. But it didn't disturb me, and people saying things to me did not disturb me. And I could now go about moving closer towards physically using the body in an accurate way within the confines of what's physically possible. So we're able to start to self correct and not be so affected by the results coming back.
Mhm.
We're able to improve our lives within the context of what we ourselves have created. And it just gives one such an attitude of benevolence towards the self. So yes, within the mess, if you will, or the situation I've created, I am going to have to turn things around. But I don't want to try and do that from a place of shame or show. I don't want to do it because I feel shamed into doing it by what others think, or to impress others. I want to do it out of self care. And I know that there's going to be a lot of, if you will, tolerance involved because the habits I've created now are going to be pulling me back. So there has to be a remarkable sense of self respect or attitude of benevolence towards the self to self correct. Even the consequences will come, but they won't affect me so much.
Mhm.
I'll be aware of what's going on and I'll be able to respond in a way that helps me to be able to change the situation. So it's really about self empowerment through self respect.
I feel that it's becomes very important bringing it back to that first lesson of soul consciousness,
Mm-hmm.
and we're actually not moving away from the topic of karma, but having to bring it back to what helps me to be able to understand, not just intellectually, but really deeply for something to be useful for me. So then, in terms of self-respect, what is the relationship between self-respect and soul consciousness?
To me, soul consciousness is self respect in the sense that when I forget I'm a soul and think I'm the body, there's first off to acknowledge that we absolutely need a sense of self worth or value. We can't live without it. It just seems to be the way we're built. And if it's not internally, naturally there, then I will seek an artificial source. The moment I forget myself and think I'm the body, I'm now in the realm of external validation. It's a natural thing that will happen, and nothing else is possible. I will think I am valuable because of something physical, because I think I'm physical, right? But now I am investing my sense of value in things that have more to do with the outer world than they do with me. It might be because of the body, it might be because of skills, it might be because of who I know and how much they love me, it might be because it's constantly these temporary sources of being valued that will eventually go. And so, but when I go back to soul consciousness and experience the innate values in the self, then I am value able, right? I have this innate sense of my own worth, this pure feeling towards the self. And it doesn't matter what is going on. It doesn't even matter if the body's falling apart. It depends on nothing out there. It is within the self. So we call it a very high form of value or income to have this very pure sense of the self. So then this self-respect happens. And the only other option, of course, we now call ego. So if I find I am sensitive or affected by things, it is always a sign that I've forgotten myself and I've slipped into that ego. And also, if I feel I am uplifted by things out there, that also is part of ego.
Mm.
So we always say equanimity in praise and defamation
Mm-hmm.
is self respect.
So, back to this aspect of being able to face situations when I have self respect,
Mm-hmm.
then what is this relationship between detachment and being able to face situations? Eventually, talk about detachment and self respect, but just
Mm-hmm.
detachment, because it seems like when you're talking about tolerance and
Mm-hmm.
when I'm facing consequences that, again, I may not have any clue. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's the part not to feel bad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, again, I have that shield of understanding. I understand why this consequence is happening. I understand that I was maybe in a state of ego and it created this, and not even to feel bad that happened, because I forgot myself and there was really nothing I could do about it. It's just a natural part of the soul moving through time, is that it forgets itself. And then when it forgets itself, it understandably engages in so there's a very compassionate feeling. Every trace of blame and shame is removed when there's understanding. So now I'm already ahead of the game. I'm not weakened by weak thoughts as I face this thing. And now I have an opportunity with that shield of understanding. And if I am receiving that power, to have a different response to an old situation. As long as I keep responding in the same way to the same situation, I'm stuck. But if I can have a different response to the old situation, I've now created a different consequence. That's where we want to get. Not detachment from everything. I want to detach from illusions. I want to detach from false beliefs. I want to detach from being so affected or victim of everything. So it's quite specific, because I'm actually going to attach to something else, which is the truth, which is what is eternal, which is to something that really empowers me. We want to actually attach a lot to our true sense of self and to, if you will, the support of God. We really want to use that a lot. So it's not that I'm just in this sort of vacuum or this lonely place where I am moving away from everything. We call it isolation.
Mhm.
It's not that at all. It's this idea of moving from limited to unlimited. So if you wish to think of it more as replacement, if that helps, rather than detachment. So I'm moving into a very powerful space, from a very disempowered place to a very empowered place, detaching from what disempowers and moving into what will empower.
Mhm. Mhm. I know time is flying by so
It
quickly.
is, yeah.
I wonder if we need more than in two parts. We'll see how things go.
Mm,
But certainly, again, the whole point of this is actually in service to getting back to myself again, aspect of
mm,
karma. And it's not just for it to be a nice little intellectual
mhm,
enjoyment, I suppose you could say.
mhm,
But I feel like at least the take home message for today really is, I really, really want to get a sense of the experience of myself as a soul.
mhm,
Maybe it's always a take home message every time,
mhm,
but to be able to, why karma seems to be an essential topic, because things are happening all the time. And
Mhm.
sometimes the awareness of being a soul can be quite abstract and,
Mhm.
it's so disconnected. And to be able to have a better sense of understanding so I can actually practically use it.
Mhm.
So maybe if we're open, we can move into reflection
Mhm.
and we'll continue again next week.
What spirituality provides me with is a different set of glasses, a different lens through which I can see what's going on around me and within me, to begin to reframe or reorganize the events in my life and what they mean, and the understanding that as spiritual beings, we have this wonderful journey through time, and that journey is moved along with this law of karma. And the most basic rule of this journey is that the state in which I begin the journey must also be the same state in which I conclude the journey. We start in such a beautiful, very full, very valuable state, and we have to return to that state. If I can understand that much, perhaps I will begin to see that whatever situations are going on around me aren't just the result of my past actions. They also are moving me towards that future state, which is the same as my original beautiful state. I will begin to appreciate what's happening in my life and maybe even cooperate, be guided by what's happening in my life because it's so relevant to my story. Yes, I've created what's happening, but also what's happening is moving me closer and closer to my original beautiful state. Om Shanti.
It's quite eye opening that whatever is happening is moving me back to my original state. So we can't continue further because of the time, but it makes me realize that we perhaps have a very linear perception of what
Mm.
karma means. Random is one thing, but linear is another thing. We don't think about the
Mhm.
full circle of our story again.
Yeah, we
So,
have this beautiful saying, what goes around comes around,
mhm,
and it's true, but perhaps we can have a more pleasant feeling around that
mhm,
term
mhm.
than the way we often use it.
All right. Well, thank you for those for joining. Thank you, Judy, for
Thank you to our
staying on your
interviewer.
toes with all these questions. But
Mm.
again, I know this is a pretty interesting topic, I would say, especially given the times as well. And so feel free to send any questions by email as well. We can always address them. And if you join us again next week, if you have questions that suddenly come on the spot, you can certainly share with us on the chat box as well. We do have a monitor in front of us. All right, I'll pass it over to Judy in terms of upcoming sessions.
Mm.
Shanti.
Shanti. I do really value this topic. I think it's so important to have an attitude of self care towards the self. And that attitude already allows me to respond to things in a different way, a way that might actually benefit the self and others. So it's a really powerful topic. In terms of what is happening in the next few days, we have Inner Fitness on Saturday on our Zoom platform. platform from 2 to 3 p.m. And topic, we haven't decided. I think it was quality. So I think that might be what we go with. But also on this weekend and next weekend, we're offering the Raj Yoga experience. So this is the foundations course in Raj Yoga. It's going to be 1 to 2 p.m., both Saturday and Sunday, this weekend and next weekend. And that will be on the Zoom platform. So please visit our website if you wish to join to get details on that course. So we'll be looking at basics of Raj Yoga, soul and Supreme Soul and yoga. So that will be 4 sessions, two on each weekend, Saturday, Sunday, 1 to 2 p.m. And World Meditation Hour is September 20th, this Saturday, 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. It's been beautiful to watch so many souls join. This to me is the need of the time, is to really, really contribute vibrations of peace and well-being and contentment to a world that's desperate for that kind of balm, if you will, very healing vibration. So our concerns with health are certainly not just physical at this time. It's so important to maintain spiritual well-being at this time. So 6:30 to 7:30, World Peace Day, World Meditation Hour, this Saturday, the third Sunday of the month. So again, most welcome to join. Raj Yoga course in Hindi, and that's this weekend and next weekend from 1 to 4:30 p.m. Again, details are on the website, and we're really delighted to share that we have started very slowly to phase in some public on site programming at the Northeast Center, and that will include the Raj Yoga class in Hindi. So you need to register. There is no dropping in available, everything is through registration. So please check out our website if you plan to join those courses at the Northeast Center. And I think that's it for now. If not, you'll find it all at the website. Thank you so much for joining tonight or whenever you are listening. Until we meet again, Om Shanti.